Good morning, friends and foes, and welcome to the hopefully weekly episodic episode of Dads on Life. If you're looking at your screen, you might notice that there's only two of us, but we are definitely working diligently toward more shows. And sometimes our colleagues cannot join us. Today is one of those days where we're down to two, but we're going to make this work anyway. Good morning and welcome, my friend Dave Dusenberry.
How you doing, everybody?
And I am your temporary host, Keith Bogan, with all due respect to Jason Miles, who has some pressing matters he's dealing with this morning. So we will carry on the flag without him.
Absolutely.
Today we are looking at a very interesting topic that we bandied about over the last couple of days, the concept of what we teach our kids in terms of giving back. Perhaps looking at their concept of philanthropy behavior, philanthropic behaviors. Excuse me, I can't even talk. It's early in the day. I need more caffeine, but I'm working on it.
I'll
Um,
drink to that.
yes, there we go. I'm assuming there's only caffeine in that cup, but that's good. Uh, so feel free, Dave. You and I banded it back and forth. Kick it off.
Yeah. I mean, when it comes to giving back, this is something I think about a lot. And you know, I I'm fortunate enough in my life to have had an amazing example, somebody to emulate and live by when it comes to giving back, in a number of different ways. Because there's a number of ways you could do it, right? Obviously you could do it financially, you could do it through deeds, you could do it through actions, you could do it through just mere presence, right? There's a number of different ways that you can give back, and I will say that my mom is was probably one of the archetypes when it comes to giving of herself to her friends and community and the people that she cared about, and even people that didn't know her. My mom was she in her later years got heavily involved in community service. She did a lot of stuff with some of the homeless shelters and some of the drug shelters and things like that around her town where she lived. She was very active with her church, um, and she was very giving of her time. Uh, it was said that my mom always willing to be a volunteer, always willing to help out, and always did everything with a smile on her face. With all of the time that she gave and the efforts that she gave, I think the thing that she gave back the most that I hold as an example is her attitude. Um, her concept of treating everyone equally and fairly that everybody talks about, but nobody really does. Um, my mom did that. She treated people with grace. She treated people with humility. She was still able to set boundaries and not be walked all over, which is very important. But she was able to make people feel like they were, I don't know how to describe it, but she was able to make people feel like they were someone, even if they didn't necessarily feel that way. Um, and that's a concept that I've taken to heart that I try to emulate in my life. I've done it for a long time. When it comes to dealing with friends and family and people that I love, um, I take the time to listen. I take the time to hear. I take the time to give back myself. I take the time to try to embrace the human in people. And it's something that I've passed down to my kids. One of my big lessons that I tell my kids, well, there's a couple of them. One is treat people the way you would want to be treated, not necessarily how you get treated. So I've had people wish me all kinds of vile stuff over the years, whether in jest or in truth. And I'm not I'm not big on being a mirror of actions against me towards them, which seems to be the common approach now. I prefer to be a mirror of self and treating people the way I would treat myself, which I try to treat myself with love, with patience, with kindness, with empathy, with very direct honesty. Um, and I kind of pair that with what I've talked to my kids, and that's, the relationship that you have with others is a direct mirror of the relationship that you have with yourself. If you're comfortable being direct and honest and loving with yourself, it makes it a lot easier to do that with others. If you're comfortable lying to yourself, it makes it very easy to do that towards others. So getting that relationship right will give you the skills to be able to provide that outward towards others. And that includes, like I said, for me, giving back, the big thing is giving back love and honesty and caring. Because I don't know, in a lot of the interactions that I see, whether in person or online or things like that, there's not a lot of that. It's not the norm. Let's just put it that way. That's my experience.
A little bit of background noise for me, but let me contribute then, and then I'm going to leave you to talking for a moment because I'm going to have to step away for a bit. But
Sure, sure.
I think it's all about role models. It really is. Um, I grew up in a very interesting household. So from a public perspective, my parents were fabulous role models in this area. Not necessarily in the like soup kitchen type of thinking or the, feeding the homeless or something like that. It wasn't that at all. My father was my youngest memory was that he was the president of the school PTA, and my mother was the secretary treasurer. I forget which, if it might have been both, I forget, but it was a long time ago. And then my father would go on to be the leader of one of the political parties, not just in our town, but he was very, very powerful in statewide politics. And I bring that up not because it's philanthropic behavior, but uh, he didn't want to run for office. He wanted a better world for people, so he tried to do it through politics. He never would get in front of a camera. He would never be the focus of attention. So it wasn't about him. In fact, very few people actually knew who he was in the public eye, if you will. There were plenty of people in the state who knew who he was, but he stayed hidden in the background. He would put up other people and sing their praises and talk about their ability to contribute, their ability to lead. And he worked tirelessly for what I think was more than a decade to get people elected to different positions. And by doing that, he was giving me the role model of put other people first. So
Hmm.
actually somebody sitting in this room who noticed that I am constantly, even at my own events, I'm putting everybody else in the spotlight, and I shy away from it.
Hmm.
So it's sort of, I realized about 5 years ago, holy shit, I'm my dad. I imitate him all the time. I didn't even realize it until about 5 years ago,
Yeah,
which is a hard concept for me because privately, I don't think he was necessarily the best father. He did a lot of good things for the family, but he didn't have the emotional capacity,
yeah,
because of a lot of his experiences, to be a loving father per se, at least in the way that I would define it. Um, so it's a really strange balance. I got focused on the personal stuff, the private stuff more. Publicly, I became him very quickly, and I think we all became him very quickly. I'm going to leave you to the next set of comments, and I'm going to be back in about
sure,
30 seconds.
sure. Sounds good. Yeah, no, I think there's a lot of value in that when it comes to giving back. There's a couple approaches. You can do it in big projects, grandiose gestures. I admire the the push to run for office to get people into positions of power where they can make big change. That's a big refrain. That's something that a lot of people seek politics for the spotlight, because they want the attention. That seems to be a very common theme amongst our current political climate. Um, but I know that there's also tons of people that work tirelessly in the background for to improve a small part of their community or their town or their state or even their neighborhood. People work in the background to try to get this stuff done. Um, I've always been somebody that likes to focus on individuals. It seems it's I found in my life and in my experience that the most drastic change that you could potentially make is on an individual level. I've had friends of mine that have seen some pretty crazy stuff, um, led some pretty hard lives, had some pretty traumatic experiences, and my heart breaks for them. It really does, and it's funny. I'm even get choked up just thinking about. I have one particular friend that I've known since I was, God, 16. Somebody actually my brother used to date way back in the day, and we're now basically right both around the mid-century mark, and she's still somebody I stay in touch with, and she's had a very hard life. And the one thing that I've done consistently, or at least tried to, in our discussions throughout the years and decades and all this time, is to kind of give her a little glimpse of positivity, because she doesn't get a lot of that in real life. Um, whether it's discussing dreams or futures or family um or just inner beauty and love. Like we talk a lot about that. And I try to push those forward with her because she doesn't get a lot of that in her day-to-day life. And I believe that I think everybody needs stuff like that. They need a positive influence. You talked about role models, right? I try to be a positive role model for the people in my life, whether it's friends or family or especially my kids. Um, Live through example, provide a good example for them to emulate and follow, because that's what my parents did for me, and I think it worked out pretty well.
Well, I mean, you're not to put too fine a point on it, but there are 5 people in this group, and you're a positive role model for us. So, kudos to you for that. And God knows some of this group needs that, especially me. Um, but I think that's where philanthropic thinking comes from, or just the concept of
Yeah.
doing good things for other people. I know people, I believe very strongly that people are born thinking that way, or born instinctive toward that. And then it's about life experiences, about whether or not you run into obstacles that dull your desire to be that way, or whether you're led through those obstacles by someone who has a more positive outlook.
Yeah.
And I think you certainly, and me to a certain extent, you know, my parents, like I said, were heavily involved in those things. Um, It's interesting now that I think about it. I think back to, so it was myself and the woman I was married to, and the role model we provided for our kids. And we got them involved in a lot of different things from a very young age, especially through their Jewish education. There was a number of different things that they got involved in that were openly philanthropic projects, with groups of kids in New York City going to different charitable groups and helping them raise awareness. They actually engaged in competitions with other groups to demonstrate why their group was more worthy of philanthropic help. Um, so that's pretty cool. And they haven't necessarily acted on it since they like went off to high school or college, but the thought is definitely in their head. And interestingly enough, one of the things I've noticed over the last, I'd say, 5 or so years, that I think they were more instinctively philanthropic. Let me check that. They were more instinctively understanding of people less blessed
Mhm.
than I was. Um, they they automatically go into a situation waiting for someone to show who they are, and if they're not as if they don't have as much access to things, their instinct is how can we lift them? How can we help them get better?
That's
Uh,
cool.
and that was something I had to learn. I was
Yeah.
exposed to it early on, but I still had to learn more of it. For some reason, it's more instinctive in them, and I don't know whether it's the role model that I have, or that their mother and I have created for them by putting them in these groups that literally practiced, didn't actually do, but literally practiced philanthropic behavior. Um, just the mindset of it, if you will. Um, I'm scratching my head because she and I were very I thought very good about putting the kids in these spots. But I think back, I don't know what it was in her history that gave her that positive edge. I mean, I met her parents and they're good people and all that. But I don't know what activity she engaged in that helped her want to have her kids be like that too. But if she was very naturally inclined toward that, and that's really cool. And it may just
Hmm.
be outgrowths of Hebrew school because we sent them to Hebrew school starting in second grade so they could have their bar mitzvahs, and a lot of that ties to philanthropic teachings, if you will.
Hmm.
It's not
Hmm.
just about
I mean,
money.
yeah, I mean, there, like when it comes to, and it's funny, this is the line that I walk when it comes to time, because obviously there's a big part of giving back, philanthropic pursuits and charity and things like that that ties heavily to religious groups, organizations, and and the like. Um, they're closely associated with you know giving time, money, resources, food, clothing to those that are less fortunate, right? And that's a pretty universal thing amongst just about every single church group that I've been a part of, and I've been exposed to a couple of different religious sects over my years.
Probably every
Um,
religious group, not necessarily just church.
exactly, exactly. And I know that that's a big part of where my mom gets it. And I think the attitude of giving back, and, whether it's from church or whatnot, it kind of there's two roots to it that I've seen. There's one that says, I am a beautiful person. I feel like a beautiful person. I want more people to feel like this, so I am going to give up my time and my energy to bring people up. There's another one that says, I don't feel like a very good person. I am I'm not happy with who and what I am. I don't want anybody else to feel this way, so I am going to provide the resources so that other people can can can
Mhm.
can have what I don't think I have, right? You either give from a position of strength or from a position of need, right? And church allows both groups. I think more the latter, as a conduit to do that. And with my kids got some religious experience early on. My ex was Catholic. Um, we did Catholic pre-K for both of my kids. We attended Sunday school, or yeah, they both attended. They both did religious schools for a while. We attended church for a while until things got a little weird with the Catholics, and then the kids were like, yeah, no thanks, I'm okay with this, and we had separated at the time, and I was like, well, I wasn't raised Catholic, so I mean, I'll bring them if that's what we need to do, but it's not instinctive in me. Um, so that's kind of where that died off. But I know that my mom got a lot of inspiration on who and what she was from attending church. She was a very, very much a regular at church. You know, we did Baptist church for a while, and forget what denomination the ones were down in where she was at her place. But that gave her access to be able to give of herself to people in the neighborhood, and it gave her a platform to be her shining light self and expose that to more people. I could see myself doing stuff like that, and it's a shame because like that's the element of church life and community that I really like, right? I like that part. I'm not so cool with like the whole judgment part and things. I am somebody that
You
is
don't want
very
to be
positive.
nailed to a cross. Is that what you're saying?
It's uncomfortable. You can't take a bite of your sandwich. It's so inconvenient. But
Yeah. Leaves you with a sore back
there,
and all that.
yeah, I know. God, it's murder on the feet too. It's a
Hmm.
horrible choice of words. Um, um anyway, but but yeah, there are elements of church life, and I spent time in church when I grew up. Attending a bunch of different types. Whether it was multi-denominational, Baptist, or I mean, I started out as a Presbyterian. Um, I've done a number of different types of religious organizations, and there's some really cool, good stuff there that helps give of themselves to the communities. And I much prefer it when churches and religious organizations spend more time and focus on being good people and less time and focus on judging or decrying others. I've seen a
AKA
shift
the
towards
religion itself.
I've seen a shift in major religious organizations toward the latter over the last 10 years or so, and it doesn't make me happy. It leaves me at odds. I've always been somebody that I believe that I am a Christian, but I don't follow any one particular religious sect. It's more of an individual, personal relationship with God, which is actually something my mom heavily preached. That's why she was able to attend a number of different churches over her years. Is in her mind, it was a personal relationship with God. It wasn't something that you got from. You didn't make it better by being in a big community. You had a one-on-one personal relationship with your higher power, right? Um, and that's the core that gave her the energy to be the person that she was. And I've always thought that that was a fantastic example and a beautiful example of how to approach it. And I think that's what drove her to give back as much as she did.
That's, you're repeating something that our rabbi said a lot. So we've had very different experiences, and I think I may have mentioned this in other shows. I was born Jewish, and in the first 30 years of my life, I attended, and this is all really in the first 12 years, I attended synagogue 3 times. I always used to refer to them when I was a younger man, and I still do, as the 3 best naps I ever took. It was, I mean, I would literally fall asleep. I was not
Yep.
interested, and neither was my family. We were going with another family, and it was just sort of almost a social thing. And I don't remember how my brothers reacted, but they probably slept too. I mean, I literally fell asleep. So I didn't have that role model from the religious perspective. That's why I talked about how my parents were involved in school board running and then eventually politics, but it was always with the intention of trying to represent the people and bring people the things that they wanted and that they may need. Uh, so it's sort of a very different viewpoint on giving back, if you will, but you don't get paid to run. I'm going to say something really charged here. My father did not get paid to run the political party. He didn't get any payoffs or anything like that. He certainly, the two of them certainly did not get paid to uh, get themselves involved in PTA management. Uh, but but that was my role model where I had none of the religious effect at all. But starting in 1993, when I met the woman who I would marry, I did get to be in synagogue and start hearing those lessons fairly regular. Not that we were very regular attendees, but high holidays, the occasional Friday, things like that. And what we were watching what the kids were doing when they were in second and third and fourth grades and their teachings. And I think a lot of that carried to me in the way that I like when I run my networking groups. As I said, I hide in the background. I very rarely let myself be in the spotlight, just like my father did. But I'm constantly promoting people, whether it be in person at the events or at on social media. And my sons see that. My sons see the behavior, and I think there's a piece of it that's in them that will develop over time. I mean, they're still only in their mid-20s, so they haven't had a chance to do stuff like that. Um,
Yep.
but they have had, some of the practice with the religious groups. Um, Separate topic for a separate show, but kind of related. I wonder if the obvious lessening of their generation's involvement in religion will have an impact on philanthropic behavior. Since
Mm,
so much of the modeling behavior comes from the community of religion,
mhm.
and parents have demonstrated they're not very good at being partners in the teaching process, will the concept of philanthropy struggle to even survive in the next 25 to 50 years, unless there's a reversal in the amount of people who are interested in learning about religion and engaging in religion. Now, and I'm not a guy who thinks that religion is all that. I'm kind of like you. I go there for the sense of community. I love to read the history of the Jews and you know, uh, each of the holidays has a very specific reason for it and the struggle for freedom and that sort of thing. but the religious part really doesn't interest me at all. The stuff that you can't explain scientifically. Sorry, I'm just one of those people. Um,
Hmm.
so but I think our kids are even less. So my kids were really involved. They were really into it. Not just the Hebrew education, but also the philanthropic stuff, all the way through age 13. And then they were very proud to do their bar mitzvahs. And then they were gone. And that was it. My younger one did stay on, what is it, I guess through 10th grade. So like another 2 years to get what we call confirmation in Jewish religion. Um, and neither one of them has come near a synagogue since. They just don't touch it. Um, I think we might have dragged them to one or two high holiday ceremonies, but that's it, services. Yeah, neither one has any interest whatsoever. But the lessons are instilled.
Yeah.
One of the things that used to, I think, drive my wife nuts was that in synagogue I was so uh, wired about the lessons of being a good person and giving back and doing things for other people that I would frequently ignore. I love the rabbi, but I would frequently ignore the religious stuff he would talk about, and I would whisper in the kids' ears about the giving back part, about the being the good person part. And she'd be like shushing me, and you got to listen to everything. I'm like, no, it's such, this is the important part that I see, and this is what I
Hmm.
need to talk about. And I wanted the kids to be focused at that time to hear the stuff about doing the right thing and being the right person and helping other people do the same thing. Uh,
Hmm.
yeah, I haven't really analyzed this since those days when I was married and since those days when we were doing religious stuff together with the kids. Let's see, Justin's 25 now, so it's been over a decade since we've done any of that with him. Um,
Hmm.
but I used to get in trouble. Not surprisingly, I used to get in trouble in the shul, just talking out of
That's
turn.
funny. That's funny. Yeah, it's funny. There are aspects of it, like one of the things that my mom followed a lot, and it's passed down to me, is that and I've mentioned it a couple times, is to treat everybody like equals. The highest of the high, the lowest of the low, treat everybody as equals. Everybody at their core is human, right? We all bleed red. We all, for the most part, have lungs, unless you're in a dire medical situation. Um, but you regardless of the color of the outside of the package, regardless of the various controlled substances that you may or may not have ingested into said temple over the years, at our core, we're all human, right? Doesn't matter what your bank account balance is. None of that stuff matters at the core. We're all human. Um, that factors into me. I've said to my, I'm a musician, been a musician for years. I've had the opportunity to play some pretty big shows with some pretty big acts. I am not somebody that gets starstruck. Like, I being famous means nothing to me. Like, I don't care because it goes to that core thing that my mom instilled in me, and that person walking around, they're human, like I am. Like, it doesn't matter, you know. Yes, they've done some great things, and they should be, you can give them some praise for that. That's cool, but I'm not somebody that goes gaga over somebody that's famous. It's just not something I do. Because they're no better or worse than I am. They've made some good decisions and acted on their talent, and that's awesome. I give them praise for that. But it's no different for me than somebody who's maybe struggled with addiction or has had a medical need that has been challenging for over a decade, of which I know people in both of those avenues. They're just as human as I am too. Um, and one of Christ's core principles that gets I think horribly overlooked amongst modern religious teaching is that that's what he did. He treated everybody as equals. It didn't matter. He didn't give anybody extra praise because they are famous. He didn't kick people down if he thought that they were below them. He treated everybody as equal. He actually treated the lesser of us to he's put much more time on taking what would be considered the lesser of society to bring them up and make them feel good, and was more than happy to treat people that were way too full of themselves to bring them back down to earth to keep everybody on the same level.
You made me miss
Um,
one point there, by the way. if I understand, and I'm not any expert at this, and of course Jews look at Jesus differently than Christians do, but the one thing that I think I understood about Jesus is he didn't treat anybody differently depending on what religion they followed either.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Didn't matter. Yeah,
Well,
I,
that's
I, I
really
say all the
important
time.
because it's a battle between the religions, and some
Yeah,
religions think, oh my God, he was this, so therefore he must not have liked the other religion, and that from everything I understand of the lessons, that's not true at all.
no. There, the number one thing I like to say is there was no Christianity when Jesus walked the earth, because
I'm
he
not
was the
touching
one
that.
that kind of formed it. Like, yeah, I mean that's what I say, and I've followed and had a chance to get exposed to different religious things. You know, you talk about the consistency of the golden rule amongst pretty much every single religious following there is, and that's basically at its core is treat others the way you would want to be treated, right?
Yep.
That is a fundamental foundational rule of just about every single religious sect, organization, teaching, whatever you want to call it, throughout the world, regardless of where you are, is to treat others the way you would want to treat yourself. And the goal of that rule is to build up yourself and have love within yourself that you can expose to others, and treat people as equally as you would treat yourself. It's a core thing, and it's something that I think people tend to take for granted but don't actually live. My mom lived it more and better than just about anybody else I've ever met in my life. Um, it provides me inspiration every day. It's guided my approach to how I teach my kids. It it affects my it influences my relationships with my coworkers. Um, with it's a core principle of mine, and I was blessed to have somebody in my life to emulate as an example. Um, that was able to follow that and actually not just talk about it, but actually live it. Like in the little moments with like where nobody else is around, she would live it. One of the things I was just talking about this with my son the other day. Um, so my my 18-year-old is getting ready to finish his high school time and preparing for college, right? Um, his challenge has been being consistent with his work. Any parents out there that's watching this, you're gonna know what I'm talking about.
Hmm.
Okay. Um, he can do good things well in spurts, but being consistent on getting things done is a huge challenge for him. And I mentioned to him, the one thing I'm trying to instill in him now by giving him the time to work on the skill is integrity. And I define integrity as what you do and how you approach what you do when no one else is watching it, right? You need to get your work done. Nobody's there to remind you that you need to get your work done. You have all of these distractions around you available to you that you can choose to pursue if you want. Integrity says, I have responsibilities that I need to get taken care of. I am going to choose to put my focus and complete those before I move on to other things because that is what I need to do. Um, he's working on it. Not there yet. Um,
I think all younger
my
people
mom,
work on that in the beginning.
yeah, exactly, right. Um, my mom was a great example of that. She was somebody that took care of what she needed to take care of, was very consistent about it, and allowed herself the time and the energy afterwards to be able to go out and be a good person as an example to others. Um,
I
it's
wonder, I wonder what your mother was like as a young person when you weren't there
my
yet.
mom, my mom. So it's interesting because my mom grew up in North Jersey, and she was born in 1947. She grew up in North Jersey. Her parents her parents used to own a movie theater up in North Jersey. She spent a lot of time watching movies in that old movie theater that was owned by her parents. Um, there were some pretty blatant racists in our family early on. She's told me stories about it. Um, not the most positive influence for her. And I think she kind of took the way that she wanted to be as and I can respect this because I got a little bit of this too. She, she saw what was going around her about things that she didn't like, and she's like, I'm not going to be like that. She did the inverse. She didn't say, I have a positive influence that I want to emulate. She had a negative influence that said, I'm going to fight against that. That is not what makes me feel good as a person. And that's not what I am going to choose to emulate. I have a different way that I want to go about this, right? I understand that because when my brother was in before he went to rehab, um, in our late teen years, he he was an asshole. Let me just put it that way. He was an asshole. He sucked, right? Um, and I remember at the time when he was using and being an asshole, I remember saying to myself, well, I am going to be everything that he is not. I'm going to stay away from this crap. I'm not going to treat people that way. I'm not going to have these influences in my life. I'm not going to associate with this type of person that my brother has chosen to associate with because I think it's kind of made him an asshole. I don't want to be an asshole. Um,
Hmm.
and I credit him to this day for that. I was like, you being an asshole helped make me a better person. So thank you.
But
Um,
parents are not the only role models out there. And
no,
you talk about with your mother and dealing with racism in the family, she may have chosen to to do the reverse, but I think she also chose to follow other role models that weren't in the family who had a
yep,
better, what we consider a better view on life.
yep, yep.
More
And I know religion factored heavily into that as well because she's always been of the type. She's always been a church going person her whole life. She was always that way. So yeah, I mean, I believe that we as a whole, as humans, individuals, and again, like I said, I talk a lot about building individual relationships, right? I'm very big on the one-on-one, share a little bit of yourself, take a little bit of the people that you interact with, and use those little bits and pieces to build up who and what you are to whatever finished product you end up at the end of your life, right? I I think there's a lot of power in that because it allows you by taking this big coagulation of influences over your life, and it could be a 5 minute conversation, it could be a lifetime friendship. It doesn't matter. You can take away something from every single person that you meet and use it as either a positive influence or motivation, or use it as a negative influence and motivation. Um, and allow all of those things to kind of intertwine and make you you. I'm not who I will be when I end my time on this earth yet. I still got lots more to do. And I tell that to my friend and I tell that to my kids. Like learn from whoever you interact with, take the best of them and incorporate it. Take the worst of them and use it as a lesson to fight against. Um, and to go back to our topic of giving back, I think there's a lot of power there because you can give back that worldview. You can give back that positivity. You can give back that love that other people that are walking this earth aren't currently getting. And if by you giving that to them, they can then take it and embrace it and build on it. Maybe they've never had somebody in their life that's given that to them to
hmm
give them that foundation to build on. And
Run
I
into
don't know.
that
I think
all the
that's beautiful.
time.
I love stuff like that.
Yeah, I run into that all the time. I run into people, so I'm big in the networking world, bringing
Mhm.
people together that just meet each other and see what magic happens. A lot of it gets tied to job search. So naturally, I meet a lot of people who are out of work, and I
Mhm.
hear all the time, like constantly, that no one stopped to explain certain aspects of how to meet people or look for a job properly or just be introduced to people that so many people I've met. I'll introduce them to this person, this person, this person, and they'll come back to me and say, without those introductions, I'd still be unemployed. You changed the path of my career and all that stuff. And I hear it all the time. And all I did was what I always do. I just made sure that it's a bunch of people in the same room at the same time and I let magic happen. So I don't think what I do is anything special, but
Mhm.
it has this impact on a lot of people. There's many, many stories
Yeah.
like every HR person, they'd say, you should write a book. And my book would go down the networking path, not necessarily HR, but um, it's fuel. And I think one of the things that's important for the kids, and I don't know if they've had a chance to tank up yet. And I talk about fuel. Um,
Mhm.
the more I've been running my networking organization for 21 years, and the more I do it, the more I feel good. So philanthropy is a life fuel, if you will.
Mhm.
I saw this when the kids were involved in their activities through synagogue, that they got a charge out of it. You know, they may not have done anything lately, although like they're both involved in their fraternities and stuff like that, and they immediately went to offices within the fraternity instead of just hanging out and drinking beers. Um, so there's pieces of it, but as they get back involved in it, I have a feeling both of them will, as they start to build their careers, start being more involved in things around their communities.
Mhm.
I know from experience, uh, it's a drug, not in a bad sense,
No.
but I don't. I'm no scientist, so when I'm like hypothetically, well, it must set off the endorphins or whatever the expression or whatever the chemicals in your body are. It is something that is a really feel good thing when you can sit back and you don't have to toot your own horn. I never do it, but you know that someone over there is, and someone over there is in a better place, whether it's a better job or a better frame of mind or something like that,
Yep.
or they have a better shot at their next meal, or they're sleeping with a roof over their head or whatever. There's something that most good people get a charge out of. And the more fuel you get from that, the more you can do, which is why you and I have sort of we skyrocket with that stuff now.
Mhm.
I think if you didn't get, like everything else in life, if you didn't feel like it was rewarding to do it, you probably wouldn't do it again.
Yeah.
Uh, and which is why I think that it's also we talk about you're always a parent, not just when they're little kids. So
Mhm.
mine are 22 and 25, but I'm still talking to them about things they could do to help other people. And they still have to get to that point where they take off and they're in flight. Uh, Once they're in flight, they're going to be fine. But
Yeah.
they've been so focused, rightfully so, on their education for a while. But I can see the signs in Justin, for instance. He both of them did the marching arts. I've talked about that ad infinitum. Now they're both
Mhm.
retired from it because they're too old to do it. You have to stop when you're 21 or after you're 21. But Justin has gone back and he's teaching both at the drum corps and they get a small stipend, but it's not for the money, obviously.
Yeah.
Teaching at the drum corps, he's teaching at a local high school. Jeremy is going to be teaching at that local high school with Justin next year. Like I said, it ain't about the money. Uh, Justin has talked in the past about developing a scholarship for those in need at the drum corps, because drum corps is not cheap. To march a summer of drum corps, you better have $5,000 ready to cough up for the tuition. It's a
Wow. Yeah.
fairly expensive thing to do, and that's every summer. So he's starting to talk about a partial scholarship that we would develop for the for one, well, at least one in the beginning kid per summer. So he's thinking about ways of giving back because he understands the power of what marching arts or uh, music and things like that, what that can do to lift people out. One thing I found very interesting about the marching arts is that a lot of those kids have issues. A lot of those kids come from places that they weren't raised the best ways, and they need that kind of boost up to feel good, to get into the flow of life. Um,
Mhm.
there's a lot of depression. There's a lot of anxiety in those kids. They come from very what we would consider different backgrounds. Um, and Justin is very much wants to do that sort of thing. Jeremy hasn't said anything yet, but I can see that coming because they wind up doing the same thing all the time. So I can see them getting together once Jeremy is on his feet, so to speak, and work in the working world, which he just graduated, so he's not working yet. But
Mhm.
once he's in the working world and once he's got a regular income and he's got, he knows his bills are paid, I could see the two of them teaming up to do that because the drum corps itself is very important to them. And what it did for them to really mature them in ways that those they went to high school would never didn't necessarily have that opportunity to mature at that rate and to have those opportunities, those travel opportunities and those opportunities to meet such a wide variety of people in this country because they went all over the country performing. Um, so that's their brand of philanthropy. A lot of people are like, go, you have to go to a soup kitchen to do that. You have to deal with someone uh, who does not have a home or who doesn't, lives on the streets. And you don't have to do that.
No,
They figured out that you can help people in a lot of different ways. Uh, and a lot of it is through social and emotional development. Um,
hmm
I used to say this when my brother, one of my brothers, the one who passed away, was used to be a first responder, was on a first aid squad. That's a bunch of nerds.
yeah,
If you talk to the people who do that, they're they're clinging to each other because they're not necessarily as socially adept as you would normally see.
no,
Uh,
and the stresses of what they do are pretty surmountable.
right.
My drummer is a EMT, and I've I've heard some of the tales of the things that he's found when out on a call. You never know what you're going to deal with, and there's a lot of freaking trauma in that, man. That's not an
Oh,
easy job.
one of my best friends right down the block is did that for like 30 years. And he would tell me some of the stories, but definitely not all of them because some of them were so
Yep.
horrific. We didn't talk about them. So, but it takes a different kind of breed, if you will, to do that sort of thing. It seems as though drum corps also attracts a bunch of kids who are socially awkward, who
hmm
aren't part of the cool gang, if you will. But it helps raise them up and gives them all the social tools that they need to be successful in life. And
Sure.
that's when my kids want to promote that to help those less advanced, maybe they don't have the right role models in their parents. Maybe they're just in a bad situation for whatever reason. And they've looked at drum corps as a way to raise kids up out of their upbringing to a place where they have an equal shot with everybody else to be a very productive part of society.
Yeah, man.
That's
It's
their
like
definition.
you get that structured social setting that they don't have outside or in their daily lives at home. Something that you have a bunch of mixed personalities getting together, but are all working together for a common goal. And then you add the beauty of music into that as well. Music is very, very therapeutic. It allows for expression of emotion that you can't always speak about. Um, I'm I'm a bass player forever, so I know of what I speak there. I use my bass playing to express feelings and emotions that I don't normally. I'm not the best at expressing verbally, specifically anger. I'm not very good at anger, but I play in a metal band, so that works for me. Um, and it sounds like that type of atmosphere that you're talking about. You know, Kids that are living chaotic lives where they don't have a lot of interactions, where the peer group that's in their neighborhoods are maybe not the best for their social development. You're giving them an environment where A, they get structure, B, they get instruction, C, they get socialization amongst a varied group of people, not just those from on their block, you know, and you give them the ability to communicate with each other to work towards that common goal, and then being able to express themselves through music. Like all of that stuff is good stuff. All of it. You're helping on a macro level with a big group, and you're helping each individual person on a micro level by building that stuff up. That's cool stuff.
And both of my kids are very much, and I like I said, Jeremy's developing into it, but Justin's already there. The idea that that's the mechanism that they can relate to that can help other people. So what can they do to give this opportunity to more people? Um, I would say that I have a different view. Not difference, not the right word, but my viewpoint, of course, is as a parent and as a volunteer. Now, I don't do that anymore, but when I was there as a volunteer, well, I could have guessed this myself. How many volunteers we would have 100 kids in the drum corps and regularly 6 or 7 volunteers, maybe 10. And the rest of the parents didn't even show up for the most part. Like you'd rarely see the parents. And you knew that the kids were coming from homes that where they just didn't get any support, like the parents didn't care. Oh, there's a summer activity for you. Here, I might help you with some dollars, I might not, but go and get out of here so I can like live my life. That's not a parent role model, if you ask me. That's just not the way I look at it. It was really depressing to, we would put on local performances because sometimes we'd be all over the country. But whenever we were in New Jersey or Pennsylvania or something like that, and you'd have like 10 or 12 people in the stands watching the show. And you knew that there was, 80 kids, at least 90 kids who were just, parents didn't care.
Yeah.
So there's I think that my boys have also become very conscious of the fact that there are reasons why a lot of these kids struggle socially and why they haven't been given good role models, and why they might not necessarily think philanthropically, but that if they can develop some of these kids, if they can help develop some of these kids through an activity like drum corps, um, they will, those kids might turn out to be more philanthropic too and help other kids. Uh,
Hmm.
and every
Hmm.
group,
Pass it down.
I will say that a lot of those kids do give back. A lot of those kids do come back to volunteer or teach. Uh, yeah, and this is just the angle they do. A lot of, like I said before, a lot of people think that, well, if you're volunteering your time, you're probably in a soup kitchen, you're probably helping, people who struggle with housing or food or something like that, and that's not always the case. There's so many more
No,
people who are struggling
yeah,
with
that's
social
the
and emotional issues.
that's the macro level of giving of philanthropy, which is, look, it's awesome, but it's not for everybody. That takes a lot of time, a lot of resources, a lot of energy, and some people just don't have that,
Right.
you know? And that's, I mean, to use that as a gauge to judge worthiness on philanthropic pursuits is a, that's like saying, listen, I'm not going to believe that you can complete a pass unless you can make the NFC Championship game. Like, like that's not the best gauge. Like there's an infinite number of ways that we can give. And I said it earlier, either on a macro level like that or on a micro level. You know, every single time that you share of yourself and you give a little bit of positivity or perspective or enlightenment to somebody that may not have it, to me that's giving. You know, that I think make ultimately it takes a lot of time, but I think ultimately leads to a better world overall. If we all choose to make those choices in the moment to give of ourselves, whether it's freaking helping somebody, I mean, it could be as simple as me helping somebody that's shorter than me get something off of the high shelf in the supermarket. I do that shit all the time,
I was gonna say, isn't that
right?
everybody? And that's not
I
fair.
mean, I'm 6.5 feet tall, so I'm kind of obligated, right? Um, but even just that little moment, somebody is struggling with something that they can't do and they need help. So, you know, you chip in and help. You make somebody's day easier. You put a smile on somebody's face. All of that, I think the cumulative effect of that adds up to a better world um for everybody. And honestly, like you said, it's self-fulfilling, right? I do something like that, I feel damn good about it because I gave of myself and made somebody's life a little bit easier. That that generates that endorphin rush in me. I love stuff like that.
I will say, in the beginning when I introduced the show, that I didn't parrot Jason very well because I didn't finish the comment about that Dads on Life is a show about parenting from the male perspective. And I want to mention that because I was thinking about, you have talked about your experiences, I've talked about my experiences, but our kids have had the chance to see role models of both their fathers, us, and their
Hmm.
mothers. Um,
Hmm.
and although I like to frequently crack jokes about divorce, I want to give full credit to the woman I was married to in this regard. She was also an excellent role model in terms of encouraging the kids to become involved in the different activities. From the very beginning, when they were like 4 years old, we taught them dedication. So if you are going to, I think Justin's first activity was soccer. He had no idea what he was doing, but we said from the moment if you join one, you're there for the season. No quitting in the middle if you're not interested, none of that stuff.
Hmm.
You have to make you fulfill your commitment to your team, if you will.
Yep.
And that is in a way connected to philanthropic pursuits because it's really easy to go to a soup kitchen and say, I want to volunteer. And then the moment you walk in that door, and I can speak from my experience, not from theirs because they haven't done this yet. The moment you walk in that door, you're looking like, oh my God, look at those people. And a lot of people run out. They don't fulfill their commitment. So with Justin and Jeremy, well, I wasn't just pretty good at this, but she was also outstanding at this, that we taught them once you join, you are committed for at least that season or that year, if you will. Um, and
Hmm.
and we both worked together to put them in a position where they would, if they had questions, we would always answer them. Uh,
Yeah.
they, if they were curious about why they were there, we would always explain it to them. Uh,
Yep.
so it wasn't just parenting from the male perspective, and at least in the case of Justin and Jeremy, they got a full, excellent role model for her as well for these things. There may have obviously there were other things that we disagreed about, but in this regard,
Sure.
they were we equally promoted this stuff, and we were really good at putting them in a position to succeed and to feel comfortable that this is the right path, that this was
Hmm.
a feel good thing that was good for other people. Um, so that's parenting from the woman's perspective. I don't know if she would say the same thing if she was sitting here. Whatever, it's okay. But my sons definitely had two parents that provided that role model. Could I have done it
That's
alone?
good.
Could I have done it alone? Sure. Um, could I have been successful at providing that role model if we were battling over that topic? I don't know. I don't know if one person is not into philanthropic pursuits and the other is, if you can provide a successful role model to kids, because then you're too busy
Yeah.
fighting with the other person. So
Yep. Conflict.
I did not have that issue. I had, my kids had the blessing of both kids seeing both of us fully support this sort of behavior. Um, and yes, I think that if I'd been a single parent and there'd been no mother, for instance, that I would have also been very successful at that. But a lot of kids come from an environment, and I know for a lot of the drum corps kids come from this too, where one of the parents is like, "Wow, that you're a fabulous trumpet player. You got to do more of that. You got to be involved in this and that and that." But the other parent's like, "Screw that. What are you gonna do that's gonna make money, or what are you gonna do that's gonna
Yeah.
be actually productive?" And they're they're the
Yep.
naysayer, if you will. And it must be a lot tougher in families like that because there's not consensus, because
Yeah.
there's
Consensus and
conflict.
consistency. Like I've always said with my kids, like I kind of along what you talked about, I want to encourage their growth and their pursuits, right? So my three have drastically different things, right? My older two, uh, more arts driven. My daughter's a beautiful singer, draws very well. She's gotten into like sewing and costume design, and is learning about small business now that she's moved out. My older son is very much into design and graphics. That's what he wants to do as a career. He wants to go to school for it. He wants to minor in business and get into that type of thing. We want to and my youngest, he's a STEM kid. He loves science and technology and math and logic and reasoning and programming, right? Um, and they all have skills that they love to do. And my job as a father is to encourage them in what they do. Um, talk frankly about, how, what whether or not said said skill or pursuit can lead to something lucrative if that's the path that you go down, and to be open to options if it doesn't work, right? But first and foremost is to give them the encouragement, feedback, and what they need to allow them to and expose them to different avenues to allow them to find themselves and live out their lives, right? That's the foundational thing of being a parent, right? You have to, because every child, just as every human, is different, right? We're all built differently. We all have separate realities. We all have separate things that drive us and motivate us, even if you're in the same house. Um, you know, I want to be able to help my kids discover that, grow that, encourage that, and build on that to blossom into who and what they're going to be. Um, it's been, I'm in a separated household, just as you are with your boys, right? So, and in my case, it's you know, sense of separation. The only thing I have control of is what happens in my own home, right? So, I hope that the lessons are consistent between the houses, but I have no control whether they are or not. So I don't put a lot of focus on that. I tell my kids that, you know, the environment that we have here and the environment at your mom's house are both valid for you. They're both they're one's not better than the other. They're both equally valid to you. They may be different, and they probably are. I don't care. I don't care about specifics, but I'm pretty sure that they are. That's the reason why we don't have one house anymore. But there are positives and growth things that you can learn from both. Take those influences that you're getting from each side, build on the positives, um, work on a strategy to get through the negatives, and use what you're getting from both places to build to make yourself a better person in whatever way you feel you need to do it. And like you, I'm very big on when you give your word, you keep it. That's a core thing with me. If I give my word on something, keep it. Whether it's a commitment, whether it's whether it's a promise, whether it's don't take your word lightly. There are times in your life where your word is going to be the only thing that you have. You have no money, you have nothing else. But if you can give your word and keep it, that gives you value. It instills trust and it opens doors. That's my dad kind of drilled that into me. So my kids unfortunately have to hear it too. Um, but I think there's a powerful lesson in that. It kind of goes along what you were talking about. When you commit to a project or you commit to a path, see it through. You're going to be challenged. It's going to hit back. It's going to suck sometimes. Be aware that there are sometimes. I'm not going to get into this where you have what's the term that I was using the sunk cost fallacy, where you're investing so much but you're not getting a whole lot out of it. We haven't gotten to that point yet. But that will come up eventually, but we haven't gotten to that point yet.
That's
For
another
now,
show.
it's a matter of, yeah, exactly, giving your word, keeping your word. And again, if you could do that and you can emulate that, I know lots of people amongst their peer group that cannot do that. That will give you an edge and that will give you an advantage over others because it
Well,
instills trust.
giving your word is something that may be something that's all you have at the time. As you
Yeah,
say, you
yeah,
might be short on money, you might be short on whatever in life. Your soul might need to be fed. Maybe that's the only way you can feed it, by keeping your word. Um, but I think that you and I have, whether we've spoken it or not, taught the lesson that keeping your word is important for the other person you kept your word to. It might
yeah,
be
very much so.
they might be
Yeah,
hanging into your life, and that's really important to them. And I think my
yep,
kids totally get that. They totally understand that, which is I'm very proud of that, and I think you would be of yours as well.
yeah,
It's
definitely.
an instinct, because I don't think I've ever used those words or said it that way, but I know with all certainty that my kids see it that way. So
Good
yeah,
stuff.
I think we've done pretty good
Cool.
with our kids. We there. I don't have any. There are places in my life where I have regrets, plenty of them.
Hmm.
That's not one of them. I really feel like together with their mom, that we
Hmm.
did a really good job of giving them the foundation of what it's like to give back, what that means and how it can change people's lives. Um,
Yeah.
we can't do the rest of the work. That'll be up to them. But I'm
Yep.
very confident that they're going to be involved in things, whether it be drum corps or other things, but they'll be doing things that will lift up other people. And
Yeah.
that means we were successful.
I think so. I think that's a good strong measurement of success is, we plant the seed, we give them we hopefully water it in a way that it germinates and bears fruit later in their lives so that they can share the love that comes from that, the love of self, the love of community, the love of others. Um, and be able to, to use modern terminology, give those good vibes around, like that promotes positivity, I think makes a better world, and giving back is a key part of that, I think, you know, selflessness, um, in whatever way you choose to show it, um, makes for more interconnected society and a better world, I think.
And as I've said a few times here, it feeds the soul.
It does.
At
I
least it
agree.
does for me. Maybe it doesn't for other people. I don't know. I can't imagine. And the reason why I teach it so much to my kids is because I can't imagine that that's a bad thing, that it doesn't feed the soul of every person who thinks that way.
Hmm.
But maybe my view is myopic and I'm not really, there are other ways of looking at it. They don't work for me, but anyway, I think that's a good place to wrap.
Cool.
We've
I think so.
hit a good hour, and you know, salute to our comrades Doug and Chad, and of course Jason.
Hmm.
Whatever they've have other pursuits today, but we will hopefully see them again, whether it's next week or in the very near future. Um, and if we live to tell about this after this show is published, um, we'll be back to do some mini podcasts like this in the future. Whoever may be participating, that's for sure. But I want to thank you, Dave, for your all of your viewpoints. I don't want to get too deep, but you've become over the last couple of years kind of a role model for me. So, and I appreciate that.
Oh,
You
I'm
valid
sorry to hear that.
well, you validated a lot of stuff that I think, and you've opened my eyes to probably things that were in me already, but that I wasn't actively thinking about. And today is a perfect example of that. So I appreciate what you bring to the show.
Yeah, man. Yeah, man. This is good. This is good. Like I said, I think we have a good group, and I hope for all of our, for all of our listeners and watchers out there, we don't always agree on everything. I think that's kind of a big ask, but I think the sum of what we share, our experiences and perspectives from the five-ish or so of us at any given time, um, can hopefully light a little spark of familiarity inside you, and take what we say for a grain of salt. This is our life experiences. Your life may be different, but if we can inspire you in some way, shape, or form, or open that door to communication, or give you that little light to be a better person, a better father, whatever it is in your life, then, go for it, man. And check in with us. Let us know what you think, are we doing a good job? Are you getting something out of this? We'd love to hear from you.
Comments on the Dads on Life board on Facebook would be greatly appreciated.
Hmm.
We'd love to see more people because there's a whole lot of people who follow. So at
Yeah.
least four,
Chime
not
in.
just
Give us
two.
some, you know, if you want me to pass some of my hair over to Keith, I'm more than happy to do so. Just let us know in the comments.
There's certainly enough to share there. I wonder what I'd look like with long hair like that. That would be very cool. At another time, I will show you a picture of someone who has much longer hair than you, who draped their hair over the top of my head at one point recently, and there's a picture of that. So um,
Fantastic.
it's my rock and roll look, if you will. So we'll talk about that in another show if there's a topic that goes along with that, but we'll figure that out later. So
Awesome. All right.
all of us at Dads on Life, have a wonderful week. Thank you very much for everything, Dave. And of course, Jason, I have shorts you can eat. So we'll talk about that later too.
Awesome. Take care, everybody.
Goodbye.